from speaker. Oh yeah, don't forget, if you find this inspirational talk informative and useful, please don't hesitate to share what you guys got in your social media and especially Instagram, and tag at indonesian.cec during this event to show the world that actually our club is very amazing.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, we would like to give you some information. First, please mute your microphones when the speaker or another participant is talking to minimize the noise and echoing sound during the session. Second, if you want to make an intervention, please alert the MC via chat or raise hand features in the virtual meeting room. The third, participants are kindly requested to speak only after they have been called upon by the MC. And the fourth, there will be Q&A session. If you have any question regarding to the explanation from the speaker, please type your question in this link 3/international.economics. You may also put your question on the chat room, or those who watching this from YouTube, you may put your question on the left chat box. And the fifth, we need you to have a virtual applause like this. So could you please put your hands up and do it like this? Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Fitra. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope the rules that has been told by Fitra done by all of the participants for the sake of our event together. And I want to greet our speaker today to make sure that Mr. Freeman can hear me. Hello, Mr. Freeman. How are you, sir?
Hello. Good, thank you. How are you?
So we're going to talk more after the next agenda, sir.
Sure.
Okay, are you ready, Fitra, to start this event?
Of course, Amy.
Okay, so it's a time for you, Fitra, to start this event.
Thank you. Hello. Welcome to the 13th Inspirational Talk. I'm super excited to have you here. I'm excited about all the amazing conversation that we are going to have today. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank our CEC's president, Ms. Tunju, our event organizer, Mr. Edwin, and also all the CEC's committees for having us to be the master of ceremony for this event.
Okay, and now without any further ado, let's get into this event we have been waiting for. It's a good pleasure for me to introduce our amazing speaker today, who is going to talk to us about the role of Ministry of Finance, especially DGCE, in international trade cooperation. Our speaker today is Mr. Firman Bunyamin. He graduated from Diploma 3 STAN 1996 and last education Doctor of Philosophy or PhD in Economic Victoria University, Melbourne, Australia 2017. Right now, he is a head of Bilateral Section 4, Directorate International Custom and Public Affairs. And for your information, if you have any question regarding of his explanation, you can put your question on the link as mentioned in the chat room. Okay, let me invite Mr. Freeman in here. Hello, Mr. Freeman.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Mas Jamie. Thank you.
How's your life right now, sir?
All right, thank you, Mas Jamie. Thank you, Mas Fitra. I think I'm gonna share the slide from my computer. Okay.
Okay, sir. But before that, maybe I would like to say to you, sir, a lot of regional staff, when they want to learn about free trade agreement, they look for your research, sir. So your article is so helpful, sir. Thank you very much for making it.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Now the time is all yours. You can explain to us. So what you're going to explain. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. All right. Can you see on the screen my slide?
Okay, sir. It's totally clear.
All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me. Today, I'd like to share my experience in taking part in some of the international trade cooperations. The reason why I choose this topic is because I believe most of us here are working as customs officials and having involved in international trade actually, but sometimes we don't see any connection directly what we are doing in operational level or in technical level with the big picture of international trade itself. So hopefully by having this presentation and also discussion, we're gonna have a new perspective about what customs officials, what Ministry of Finance doing in international cooperations. All right, so in this presentation, I would like to answer several questions. The first one is about the importance of international trade. So I'd like to share with you why now every country is talking about international trade. But before that, my question is, there is so many, what is it, permit coming up on my screen? I don't know. It's trying to get into my meeting room. Mas Jamie, sorry.
Okay, maybe the co-host will make you not to be the co-host, because if you are co-host, so they will be feel like this. So please host to make to make Mr. Firman just being a common participant. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the next question is about the goal of international trade cooperations. And then from there, we would like to see what is the Ministry of Finance doing in international trade cooperation. And the last question is also important, is the challenges in the cooperations, because sometimes challenges could be a hinder or it could be a stimulus for the trade itself. All right, now I'm going to start with the first slide here. So as you see on the screen here, there is a trend of global export during the last 200 years. So if you see from the left down here in 1800, the trend or the line, the blue line, is moving toward a very, what is it, stagnant? This is flat until it is reaching a point in 1950s, or I think it is after World War II, yeah. So before this point, everything just flat. There is no development. There is no evolution of a trade. So after 1950s, there is a significant increase of trade. You see here until 2015, and after that, there is a fluctuation. So that means during this period from 1950s until recently, particularly after World War II, every country in the world is trying to open their market. The reason why is because they now have more money. The demand is increasing. For example, people in Indonesia, they are eating rice, but now they want to try something else. They want to try bread, for example. They want to buy butter, cheese, even they want to buy cars, machines, or household equipment. So at the same time, other countries also want to buy Indonesian commodities. For example, they want to buy Indonesian textile, batik, and also agricultural commodities. So during this period, everything is going up. Now, I'm going to show you another figure, another graph here. This is the world GDP, and the period is even longer from the previous one. So if you see here, we're going to start from year one. It's very long. And also you see that during this period until the same point as the previous one in 1950s, everything is just flat. There is no development. There is no significant improvement in GDP. So after 1950s, everything changed and it's going up very steeply. You see that? And what does it mean? So what does GDP tell about you? Well, GDP tell you about many things, but basically it is telling you about the total goods and services produced in one particular country during one particular period. But it's not only that, it can also tell you about the accumulation of knowledge, the accumulation of ideas. It's telling you about your wealth, it's telling you about your well-being, and it's telling you about your technological progress. So if there is a country with higher GDP per capita, for example, normally they have a high level of technological progress. Now, we're moving to the next slide. This is a map of shipment of the world, yeah. And you're gonna see that there are some region here very bright. This is in North America and also here in Western Europe. and some other in eastern part of Asia like China, Japan, and Korea. And this one is a little bit little spot here around, I think it's Singapore, Malaysia. So if you see from this map, this is actually the circulation of containers of the goods. But by having this figure, you can also conclude that this is also the circulation of your ideas, the circulation of knowledge, and the circulation of technology. And you see here, the brighter the region, this is also the more developed technological progress, such as in America, in like, I think in most of the Western Europe, like in German, like in UK, and other country in Western part of Europe. And also you see like in Japan, China, and Korea, also this is very bright. So you will see this is very much, what is it, correlated between trade and also technological progress and ideas. So the other channels of how, you know, technological changes or knowledge or ideas is transferred through trade is, you know, the global value chain. I bet you understand about it. That right now, there is no one particular product or sophisticated product, manufactured product is made in one particular country from one particular commodities. So for example, if you see here the production of aircraft, it's made of so many inputs and raw materials coming from different countries. Let's say you see the flight deck is coming from US, and then the wrecked wings coming from Korea and from other countries. So all the things, all the raw materials is assembled, is manufactured to produce a final goods. And then after that, it's going to be exported to other countries. So from this figure, you will see that, you know, there is a technological progress. There is an accumulation of idea and knowledge in the place where this production is taking place, right? So you see, this is a very long, what is it, continuously process from the trade to technological progress to the wealth of the world. The question is, what I have told you, what I have explained it to you, is everything good about trade? But the question is there anything bad about trade? Is there any bad side of trade? I think just like any other things in the world, there's always two-sided, what is it, fact, yeah. You can see everything can be seen from both sides, bad or good. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It depends how you see that. So it's just like a trade. Trade also has a negative, what is it? Not really negative, but I think it has a potential to be what is it? Damage the economic of the countries. As long as what is it? The trade is running in accordance to the right path. I mean, it is fair and legitimate, so everything just fine. But if the trade is going on unfair and legitimate, so I think it's gonna have a, you know, bad potential or bad impact to the economy. For example, the hasty or speeding liberalization could be damaging the poor. Let's say if there are two countries like Japan and Cambodia. Japan is one of the developed countries, and Cambodia is less developed countries. If two countries compete each other to liberalize their market, of course there is no balance. It might be what is it, damaging effect on the Cambodia. All right. So this is what we call potential impact, negative potential impact of trade to the poor. And also trade liberalization may create loopholes for fraud. because trade liberalization is offering a lower tariff. You know, normally, for example, we impose 10%, and by having trade liberalization scheme, we can grant like 0% for importing certain goods. But it may happen that the players, for example, importer, trying to falsify the document like invoice, certificate of origin to get, lower price by violate the law. So these issues becoming the concern to the Ministry of Finance, particularly customs, and also this is also the concern to every country in the world. So they are seeking for the alternative, how to make the trade, how to ensure the trade is running in a fair and legitimate way. So they are coming with the trade cooperations. Now, the question, what kind of trade cooperation is now in the global level? Well, actually, there are two kinds of trade cooperations. The first one is cooperation under World Trade Organization, WTO, or some economists call it multilateralism. So that's a global international organization, and then there are, I think, most of the countries in the world members of WTO. They're making discussion, negotiation of the set of the rules of trade, and then they sign the agreement, and they have to implement it non-discriminatory, whether it is members of WTO or non-members. So that's why we can call it most favored nation, MFN. And the other one is regional trade agreements, or economists say it is regionalism, or for us it is very common to call it like FTA, free trade agreements. All right. So this is actually a treaty or agreement between two or more countries to grant lower tariffs, and then the implementation of this agreement is very discriminatory. So it is bound only to the signatories party. For example, if Indonesia having an FTA scheme with Australia, so the elimination of or the reduction of tariffs only apply for Indonesia and Australia. So if the goods coming from non-Australia or from Indonesia, they don't have the same treatment. All right, now we're gonna see, this is also the graph that will show you how most countries now seeking for cooperations to secure their trade and to secure their economy. This is the red line here. It is representing trade among the WTO members, and the blue one is the trade among non-WTO members. So initially, you see here, I think in 1940 something, early GATT establishment, the proportion or the shares of the world trade in the WTO members is around 65 to 70, and then it is going up consistently until it is reaching almost 100%. And on the other hand, you will see that the trend of the blue line representing non-GATT or non-WTO members is going down. I think it's only few trade between non-member WTO, maybe between Iran and North Korea, probably. It's very small numbers. But the trend is going up. Why? Because every country is now seeking for security. They're trying to secure their economy. Having dealt business with WTO members means there are several regulations, set of rules that could be complied and should be followed. So that means it is more predictable to the business. Now, also on the RTA, regional trade agreements, the same figure is also running the same way. You see, for example, in 1958, there are only few agreements. I think it's only 3 or 4 agreements. And then after 1992, 95 is going up, yep, steeply here. And in 2020, for example, you will see that there are about, I think it's about 300 something of the RTAs in force. But if you see from the notification, the number is even higher. I think it's about 500 something. So this is also showing you that RTIs is one of the alternatives for many countries to do cooperation in international trade. All right, now even for Indonesia itself, well, we are facing so many FTAs right now. You see on the left side here, EIF entry into force. We have been facing 20 FTAs, and then there are 13 in ratification process, and then 11 ongoing process. So in total, there have been 44 agreements. So if you see Indonesia in the next 4 or 5 years, I think it's gonna be 44 agreements we are dealing with, and probably it's gonna, represent like more than 50% of the total trade. I think 60%. And if we add or the future FTAs here, another 15 FTAs, well, the figure even higher. It's gonna be like 59 agreements. So maybe in the next 10 years, almost 100%, I don't know. Maybe there will be a very significant proportion of trade in Indonesia using FTA scheme. So also this is a challenge for Indonesian custom in the operational level. Now, the question is, what is the involvement of the Ministry of Finance or Custom, particularly in international cooperations? Well, actually, if we are speaking about international cooperation, there are 2 types of that. The first one is international trade cooperation that was described earlier. And the second one is technical cooperations. But I'm not talking so much about technical cooperation because this is mainly the cooperation between related units in Ministry of Finance, right? For example, there is agreement of the non-double taxation between Indonesia and Singapore, or there is a cooperation of K9 between Indonesian Customs and Australian Customs and anything else. So I'm going to focus on international trade cooperation, particularly on free trade agreements. So in free trade agreements, there are 2 kind of FTAs. This is PTA and SEPA, right? So PTA means preferential tariff agreement. So that's an agreement between normally 2 countries, let's say Indonesia and Pakistan, with the smaller coverage of trade liberalizations. For example, the coverage of commodities is only 200 or 300 tariff lines. But if you are speaking about SEPA or Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, then the coverage of the goods under liberalization is, let's say, 90% or 98% of the total tariff lines in tariff books. And also the cooperation is not only about goods, but also services, investment, non-tariff barriers, and everything else. So the other thing is tariffs, rules of origin, and custom procedures and trade facilitation. Now, we're talking about tariff here. So what we are doing in tariff negotiation, in tariff discussion with other countries, with our trading partners is, the first one is product coverage. So normally customs and also fiscal agency, or we call it BKF, and also related agencies, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Industry. We are doing a discussion analysis, what kind of commodities that we are going to, to be liberalized. For example, what kind of commodities we want to get access in other country. We have agreement with Pakistan. We want to open our market in Pakistan for, let's say, palm oil commodities. And then at the same time, we are opening our market for textile commodities for Pakistan. And also we are talking about best rate, what year of the, tariff book that we are going to use. And then we are moving to product commodity, right? So there are several category here. Early harvest, for example, we are doing negotiation with Pakistan. And then, for example, during the negotiation, we see that we really need one particular commodities from Pakistan, and we want to get, the lower tariff earlier than entry into force. Then, if both countries agree, we can use this package, early harvest package. For example, if one FTA is entry into force in 2020, and then we want to get it done earlier for certain commodities, we can do it before 2020, for example, end of 2019. So there are also sensitive lists, normal track, temporary exclusion, and generally exception list. I think this is the category of goods that, for example, normal track. This is the liberalization under the schedule. A sensitive list mainly is about the agricultural product, and then temporary exclusion means that there are some commodities of the countries needs more consideration to be to be liberalized. And then general exception normally for good that is not common for negotiation. For example, narcotics is not common for Indonesia to be traded with other countries. Also tariff reduction schedule here. So I'm showing you here the table of the staging Indonesia and Australia, but this is only illustration. One FTA could be different from other FTAs. So in this case of Indonesia and Australia, let's say we see the initial tariff is 5%, and then year 1, year 2, and so on, it's going to be 0%, all right? But it might happen, for example, initial tariff is 40%, and then year 1, 35%, 30%, and then next year, 20%, and so on, until it's reaching 0%. So it depends on how you negotiate, how you make an agreement with your trading partners. All right, now the other thing that we are doing with trading partners is setting up rules of origin. All right, so let's say Indonesia and Australia has an FTA. So by having this FTA, Indonesia can import commodities from Australia, and then that importation will be granted 0% of custom duties. As long as you can prove, you can provide evidence that the commodities originated or produced in Australia, and also that commodities is exported or shipped from Australia to Indonesia in accordance with the consignment criteria. And the other thing is also important that, the exportation or the importation of commodities from Australia to Indonesia is comply with, the procedures. The process, for example, that we have for FTA right now, let's say in normal conditions, for green channel of importation, the certificate of origin should be submitted let's say 3 days after the submission of import declaration. That's kind of procedural provisions. So, all right, now next is the custom procedures and trade facilitation. I think custom procedures and trade facilitation, the goals of this cooperation is to simplify, to harmonize, and to modernize the procedures and the custom facilitation, because every country in the world has different level of level of procedures. But actually, these custom procedures and trade facilitation agreement, they are entitled to both WTO and RTAs. For example, if you look at the WTO, we have a trade facilitation agreement, or TFA, and the TFA agreement comprise 48 items. If you see here, there are 48 items. And actually, so far we are doing well. We can comply with 45 of items, and the 3 remaining items is advanced ruling, inspection, and risk management are our homework. And yeah, we still have time until 2022 to resolve these issues, and I think it's gonna be done in time. And also, custom procedures and trade facilitation, you can find it in the agreement of FTAs, particularly in the scheme of SEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. There are some agreement about trade facilitation, and most of them are referring to the WTO TFA. All right, now I'm going to show you the utilization of trade agreements so far. In national level, for example, we will see that in 2015, the utilization is 24%, and by the time 2019, it is increasing to 31%. But if you see in more detail level, like KPU Tanjung Priok, in 2015, it's been 41%, and in 2019, it is 48%, even higher. So I think these figures show us that, the role of custom is getting harder, actually, how to make sure, how to control that the FTA is running in accordance with the agreement regulation. And now the other table here is the proportion of goods imported under FTAs. The goods here, divided into 3 categories. The first one is raw materials, and then consumption goods, and then capital goods. If you see here, this is very interesting, that most of the commodities imported under FTAs is, raw materials and capital goods. So, for example, under ASEAN scheme, 74% is raw materials and 10% is capital goods. So in total, about 84% is, the commodities or the good, which is very important and which is very needed by the industry. All right. Even if you look at the IJPA, for example, here, the rate is higher, 71% for the raw materials and 20% for capital goods. So in total, it's going to be 91%. The goods imported with value added to industry, to manufacture, and that there are only 2 FTAs. We are importing consumption goods. This is under Indonesia, Pakistan, and Palestine. So I think most of the goods under FTAs are value additive commodities. So that means actually FTA is in line with global value chains, what I have explained it earlier. All right. So we see here there are two opposite situations. The first one, you see this is our role, customs role is going to be very hard to make sure that everything is on the track. And the second one is at the same time we see that FTA is generating industry with the value additive raw materials. All right, now the challenges of international trade cooperation. Of course, the first one is harmonization among government agencies. For example, we are trying to open our market in Pakistan for palm oil, and the Pakistan at the same time also request us to open our market for their textile product. And from the economics calculation, it is profitable for Indonesia to agree. We are opening our market for textile for Pakistan, and we are getting our market access for palm oil. But there is no always that case. Many government agencies, they are very reluctant, they are very resistant to that policies. For example, Minister of Industry, they just want to protect textile industry and also the association, even though we show them the calculation, but yeah, because they have their own interest. So this is one of the problems in doing calculations. All right, also trade costs, and then the other one is compliance level of economic players. So the conclusion, well, trade actually can have positive impact on economic growth as long as it is running in fair and legitimate way, and also it can be reached through international trade cooperation. And trade cooperation is also important and can be done both under WTO or under RTAs. And the roles of Ministry of Finance, particularly customs, in trade cooperation could be under WTO for Trade Facilitation Agreement, TFA. There are 48 items that I have explained before, and also under RTAs. And we have done so many things under this scheme, TIG, tariffs, ROO, and CPTF. And the challenge is, intergovernment harmonization, EODB, and the compliance level. I think that's all I can share with you. I hope there will be an active discussion after this presentation. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mas Fitra and Mas Demi.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Firman. Thank you for enlightening us with knowledge and joining our discussion today. Let's move on to the next agenda, which is Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, as we mentioned before, if you have any question regarding to the explanation from the speaker, please type your question in the link that has been shared in group chat. And you may also put your question on the chat room, or those who are watching this from YouTube, you may put your question on the live chat box, or alert the MC via raise hand features in the virtual meeting room. And of course, participants are kindly requested to speak only after they have been called upon by the MC.
Okay, thank you, Petra. And now we're moving to the question and answer section. Like what I said, there will be two methods. The first is you can ask the question in the mentioned, and the second is raise hand. Okay, I will check at raise hand method first. Still, there is no one. Maybe I think the explanation is so much clear, sir. So there's no question. And maybe I will look at the link. Okay, host. If there is question, maybe could you present it on the screen? Or maybe don't hesitate to raise your hand to ask the question. Okay, there is one question from Mrs. Tunjung. Okay, Mrs. Tunjung, the time is yours. You can ask the question.
Okay, so thank you so much, Pak Firman, for your explanation. So I would like to ask about some experts say that one of the major drawbacks for developing countries compared to developed countries in international trade is the time and stage at the time they started. So like they started way later, any poorer condition, uh, especially after World War II. And on the other hand, the developed ones had already started to explore and exploit the world even from the last millennium. So it's a wide gap between uh, the two parties. So how do you see international trade cooperation helps developing countries like Indonesia to catch up with their developed counterparts, and how customs plays a significant role to bridge this gap? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Tanjung. It's such a nice question and wonderful question. Okay, Mr. Priman, I would like to ask you, we keep the three questions first and after that directly answer, or answer the question directly, one question and one answer.
Thank you,
Mr. Priman?
Mbak Tunjung.
Okay.
Thank you, Mas Jamie. I think it's all up to you whether it is right away answering the question or just collect
Okay.
first.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, sir. To this, the misconceptions about the questions, maybe we will answer the question after one question, sir. So directly answer question. So the time is yours. Please, sir, to answer the question.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. I think I'm trying to catch up the question from Mbak Tunjung. Mbak Tunjung was asking me about between developed countries and developing countries over the period, and of course, and then what the customs can do to fill the gap. Yeah, I think yeah, it's going to be a very long discussion about it if we are talking in academics way. Yeah, but in short, I think I'm going to try to look back the history of the world. Yeah, for example, some of the countries in Western Europe, like UK and France, and they have been in the Enlightenment era long ago, long before development countries exist. Let's say, for example, in UK, in 1680 something, that's the first time the commercial bank established in UK. So that commercial bank is providing services for merchants, for the noblemen to do trade. Even they are opening international trade in 1600 something. But at the same time, if you look at let's say Indonesia in 1600 something, we were still in kerajaan, yeah, in kingdom era, where there are still wars everywhere, and then in traditional way there is no significant technology at the time, and then from there that is the start of banking. And then the second one is industrialization in, for example, in UK, yeah, like the mechanization of textile, it took place also in 1600 something, 1700 something, and the mass production of grain, manufacturer commodities also long ago happened in Western countries. And that is why they are going to conquer, colonize other region in the world. And finally, like British, they conquer half of the world, yeah, and they kept going on with the industrialization, and then from there, the level of industry spread out to other region in Europe, by trading, of course, by trading. And then from there, they are bringing, their technology to the colony region, to Indonesia, to Africa, to everywhere in the world. So actually, if we are looking at the history of course, there is a big gap between, developed countries right now with the developing countries right now. Most of the developing countries right now is, a colonialized region. Like Indonesia was under Dutch, colonial, and then other countries in Africa and in other Asian countries as well. But now today we have so many the scheme of cooperations. Let's say in trading scheme, as I said before, we have WTO. We have regional trade agreements, and then we also have one particular economic cooperation among the countries. So they are trying to fill the gap. For example, the establishment of the IMF and the World Bank was trying to fill the gap between the poor and the rich. Because if there is no rule, there is no referee, I think things are going to be even worse, for every country in the world. Now, what the custom can do to fill the gap is, of course, we are members of WCO, right? And also Indonesia members of WTO. Well, WCO actually has been issuing so many recommendations, so many best practices in any procedures, right? The temporary admission, for example. There is also regulation or recommendation about grass handling, about rules of origin, about anything. So the only thing we can do is how we can catch up with those recommendations, the level of fulfillment, right? For developed countries, let's say like Australia, they are 100% can do the recommendation of the WCO, but for most of developing countries, including Indonesia, it's not 100%. We still have to learn. We still have to study how to get there. Maybe we can learn by assistance from other country, or we can learn by ourselves. But what we can do is we can use those benchmarks to assess ourselves, whether we are already in the same level with other countries or not. I think that's the answer, Mbak Tunjung. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Firman. But before we move to the next question, I'm going to ask Ms. Tunjung, what do you think? Is your question has been answered, Ms. Tunjung?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we are going to move for the next question is from Prama. Mr. Firman, is there any study that shows us the effectivity of FTA in terms of goods exchange?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please? Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Is there any study that shows us the effectivity of FTA in terms of goods exchange?
In terms of goods exchange. Well, I'm trying to to digest the question. Yeah. So the question is there any study to show us the effective process of exchange of goods? Is that correct?
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Any study that shows us the effectivity of FTA in terms?
Maybe we can ask Mas Prima to ask the question directly. Okay. Is there Mas Prima in here?
Yeah, excuse me, sir.
Okay. Okay, Mas Prima, the time is yours.
My question is there any study that shows us the effectivity of FTA? I think that we have economic objective about FTA. So we don't want just import things from other countries, but we don't export from our country. Maybe like that.
All right. Thank you. I think I can catch the question. So your question seems to be more related to trade balance. I think how we can export more and how we can restrain the import, right? Well, there are so many studies. Of course, if you look at the economics, what is it, journals and everything. FTA seems to be effective, seems to be good for a country's economy. But the thing is, how good is that? For example, if you look at the case, the impact, the positive impact of FTA is not really big. It's not really big. Because you know what, the proportion of trade of Indonesian trade in GDP is not really big as other countries in Southeast Asia, for example. I think the proportion of trade to GDP of Indonesia around 30-something%. But if you look at the other countries like Malaysia, it's been 80% and up, and also the Thailand. So the impact of the FTA is not really big, but that number is also indication we haven't get the potential level of FTA utilizations. So if you are talking about the FTA, we are not talking about we have to export more than import. The main goal of FTA is to increase trade, right? So, for example, right now, if Indonesia is importing 2,000 and exporting, let's say, 2,100, I think it's too big number. Let's say if Indonesia now importing 10 and exporting 11, so we are trying to increase these numbers to, for example, how can we import 20 and export 25? All right. So we are trying to increase to push the level of trade itself, both import and export. You know what? Because import is also one of the particular aspects in the economy. Just like yourself, as in individual level, you are now producing services as a custom official. What you are doing, for example, as an auditor, your output is laporan audit or audit result. All right. So that is what you are exporting. What is you are importing? What you are importing is your food, your meal, your clothes, your computer. You are buying, right? And you're selling your service. That's export and import. Now, how to to get a picture of your GDP, your benefit from the trade, from FTA, when you can increase your salary. Let's say your initial salary now is 10 million. So by having trade, you can increase it to 20 million. So you can buy more. You can, let's say, you can not only you can buy a computer, but also you can buy cars, or you can buy a motorbike. That's what we call import. But at the same time, you can produce more services. All right. So what you are doing is not only audit, but also you can teach. You can also make research, and then you get paid from that. So I think that's what we are trying to achieve in macro level in the country. We are trying to increase trade in terms of both import and export. We cannot say import is harmful, but also import is beneficial as long as it is value additive to industry, for example. I think that's my question.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for your answer. And Mr. Prama, is it clear? Or is there anything that you want to ask again?
Yeah, thank you. I think I need to read more.
I think
Okay.
to answer more.
Okay. And before we go to the next question, maybe I would like to read the comment of Mr. Yudi. I believe Mas Prima himself can conduct a research regarding this matter. Actually, this is the right moment to evaluate the impact of FTAs on Indonesian economy. So it's a very great idea. Okay, so we move to the next question. I think the time is still okay. We still have time. Okay, we move to Mr. Daris Purnomo Jati. Okay, the time is yours to ask the question. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for letting me ask the question. Okay, I have one question. It's related to the previous question, I think. One theory proposed that international trade is a zero-sum games. A profit or a gain in one party or one nation will be the loss for another party or another nation. My question is, how actually the fact is, or is there any win-win win or 50-50 trade, international trade among nations, which all the nation happy? Is there any nation or any country that can survive with a minimal international trade? I believe that Indonesia, as a big nation, it can survive with by using its domestic buying power. I mean that if all the Indonesian buying domestic product, we actually don't need to like import too much. I need your enlightenment, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you
so
very much. Okay, Mr. Teman, you get it? Okay,
all right, thank you,
Okay.
Mas Daris, and thank you, Mas Zemi. This is very difficult question, I guess. Well, actually, if you referring to the textbook, it is zero-sum game. Yeah, there's a winner, there's a loser. I think it's and it's game of the free competitions, and every economist notice it. That's why in practical manners, every country is trying to make a cooperations. Just as I said before, establishing WTO and everything. So one of the measures how to make everything balanced or what is it equal between developed countries and developing countries, or LDC, for example, is making a grace period for the implementation of trade liberalization. For example, even in WTO itself, when
Okay.
period of the reduction is not the same for every country, right? For example, if you are coming from developed countries, let's say USA or Australia, then you have to eliminate or reduce the tariff right away after you sign the agreement. But for developing countries, the grace period is, for example, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, even 20 years. And also it's not about tariff, but also other things, non-tariff barriers, the procedures and everything. So of course, in practical level, we are not talking about the free competitions. We are talking about how we can do trade for the win-win solution, as you have mentioned before. And the other thing is about your question, Indonesia can be sufficient with domestic product. Well, actually, if you see the trade structure right now, or the GDP structure right now, actually Indonesia is not really exposed to international trade. Well, that means that we are, of course, relying on domestic product compared to other countries relatively. So that is why when you know what, some economic crisis, for example, in 2008, or global crisis, Indonesia is more survive than other countries, because we are not too much exposed to the global economy. So if there's something happen outside of Indonesia, we don't care. All right. So but the thing is, you know, mostly we are relying on basic commodities, or not really high manufacturing commodities. That's also the other things of Indonesia. I'm not saying it is good or bad, because it has its own good side or bad side. But if you see, if the situation is normal, it's not like now, like COVID or crisis. Well, I think it is very important to improve our trade. Yeah. Actually, if we are relying on domestic product completely, then we're gonna see things happen like what's going on in North Korea, for example, or in Iran, when you know what, the economic embargo hit the country. But of course, somehow they can survive with their own way. But of course, actually they have potential to develop themselves. Like for example, Indonesia, we have big population with the young age population, and they are very potential to learn, to study, to do research, new things, technology, and everything. So they need to buy, or they need to import valuable goods, or value additive goods from other countries. Let's say, for example, if there is no trade, if there is no big value of trade, there is no single window in Indonesian customs system. There won't be any single windows agencies in Indonesia if there is no big volume of trade. So there won't be any, for example, IKC in customs if there is no much trade between Indonesia and other countries. And if the trade is not really big, and then I think the role of custom is not really big as well. So in the future, if the trade is getting bigger and bigger, I think we're going to be very developed as well as a custom official. You see the custom official in Singapore, for example, they are very smart, because not because they are smarter than us, than we are, but because they have to catch up with the development of trade. It is a must. If they don't develop themselves, then there will be a gap between the demand of technology, demand of knowledge, and the supply, and that will damage their economy. So I think in conclusion, I would like to say that relying on domestic commodities, of course, it can be said not bad in certain conditions. But if you really want to speed up your development, your growth development, of course you have to do international trade. You have to open up your economy with other countries, of course, with some certain agreement and cooperation. Thank you, Pak Daris.
Thank you, sir. So international trade is inevitable, sir. Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, I think Mr. Daris is quite satisfied with the Mr. Bunyamin answer. Okay, let's move on to the next participant.
Okay, Mas Fitra, I think you are in a mute mode, Mas.
Okay, I think Mr. Darwin has quite satisfied with the answer from Mr. Firman Bunyamin. Let me call Sandri Kurnain to ask her or his question. The time is yours.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. In 20, 2009, when I was document examiner in Tanjung Priok, we did a big thing about the case of the free trade arrangement. We did, we examined the document of certificate of origin from China, and from what we did about the document examined, so the result is we have to make the importer to pay the duty free. We call it we reject the document. It was our some kind of our effort, because at that time some people said Indonesia has import a lot of goods from China, and when we did that kind of action, it became a big news, and all of people it's kind of we as a custom, we have everybody take a blame on us. Why customs have to reject document? And then it became the big issues. The non-government, the other government agency like Minister of Trade, as we saw at the time, has no comment at all. The question is, who from the government is represent the Indonesian government to take dialogue when we are dealing with the free trade arrangement? And it became, as I already told you, told everybody in this event, that it is, became a new, it's a big thing, it's a big issue. The question is, for Mr. Bunyamin, what is the consideration when we are dealing with other country to make the kind of arrangement of the free trade arrangement, so that Indonesia can have a lot of advantage from the arrangement? That not only because we are from the side of the officer at that time, we see we had a lot of lose at that time. Maybe it's one question for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sandri. Now we are going back to you, Mr. Firman.
Well, thank you so much, Pak Sandri. Pak Sandri is one of the custom expert. I know him very well. Well, Pak Sandri, I think yes, it is a big issue in the implementation level of free trade agreement. Particularly, we are custom as an executive body to supervise, the process of the FTAs. And your question number one is, before we decide to do agreement FTA, who's gonna be responsible for that? Of course, the agency is under coordination of Ministry of Trade. Yeah. And before we decide to make agreement with other countries, there are some consideration. Number one consideration is we are trying to open market access in other countries. Let's say we want to get into African region, so we have to make free trade agreement with the what is it, with the gate of Africa, for example, Mozambique or Tunisia. So from there we can move on to the other countries in Africa. That's number one. The second one is we are trying to defend ourselves from the FTA environment. For example, why we are doing free trade agreement with China? We know China is very powerful. China is a huge economy, so every country in the world is doing deficit with China. It's not only Indonesia. Even US, the US, Donald Trump is very angry with China for the US deficit in trade balance, and also other countries. The reason why is there is only two options. If we lose doing FTA in one particular country, let's say China, but if we don't do that, the level of loss is even bigger. So let's say if we are doing FTA with China, we're going to lose like 5,000. But by calculation, if we don't do that with China, we're going to lose 15,000. So there is no other options but doing agreement with the China. So when you see the figure of trade balance, for example, between Indonesia and China, we are deficit. But if we don't do that, I think the worst thing might happen. Let's say why initially we are trying to join Trans-Pacific Partnership, but it doesn't happen due to the withdrawal of the US. At the time, by our calculation, if we don't join the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, then we're going to lose our market in the US, because you know what, Vietnam and Malaysia, they have similar product with Indonesia, and they will have bigger access to the United States and to other countries in the Pacific region. So that's the reason why we are doing a trade agreement with other countries, even though it seems to be not really beneficial. So we are trying to reduce the risk. That's the main reason. And then what is it? Who's to blame if there is something wrong with trade? Trade balance, for example, where it is hard question, because you know what, deficit in trade balance, there might be so many causes, not only about commodities. It's very multidimensional. We have to elaborate case by case what is going on, for example, between Indonesia and China. Is it because of China is cheating with the agreement, or because of Indonesia competitiveness? There's so many things that we have to explore before we are making sure who's to blame and what to do to fix the damage. I think that's the answer from me, Pak Sandri. But if you're not satisfied with my answer, you can ask me again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Second question, if I may.
Yep.
If we take a look at the social media right now, everybody said if you want to make money, it's simple. Just become an importer. A lot of things you can import, and we can then we can sell it. What do you think about that kind of situation or that kind of condition, Mr. Freeman?
Well, I think, again, if we want to talk about that, in frankly manner, let's say, in the case of Indonesia, we don't see, the situation is, there is a, situation where the market is distorted. So it's not perfect. The market is not perfect. For example, there are some big players in the economy that are occupying, some of the commodities for the importation from other countries to Indonesia. So we have to see that clearly. But if you see that it is very easy to become rich if you are becoming importers, so that's the next question is, what kind of importers? If you are playing fair, playing fair with the free competition in Indonesian market, I think it's the same. It's the same whether you are importers or exporter. So there is no discrimination. But if your question is referring to the distorted market, or irregular activities in importation, I think it's a different story, Pak Sandri. I don't know what is you referring to. If you can explain it broader to us, I think it's going to be good.
Okay.
The good is maybe what I see from the social media is the goods that we talk about is kind of something that we usually need, something like what can I say, common goods or consumption goods. I mean, consumption goods. So, in my opinion, that is it really we have a gain from the free trade arrangement, or we have a lot of lose from the FTA?
Well,
Okay, thanks for the insight, Mr. Sandri. So, Pak Firman, do you have any response about that?
yes, sure. Pak Sandri, thank you so much. I think it's very interesting. Yeah. Pak Sandri, I understand your question because most of the consumption goods in Indonesia, they have very high tariff rate. Yeah, it's not like raw material, for example. So you know what? When we are dealing with FTA scheme, and there will be a huge reduction of tariff. Let's say the consumption goods, what Pak Sandri mentioned, has 15% of tariff and then reduced to 0%. Of course, it's going to be very cheap, right? And then you know what? There will be an increasing demand in Indonesian domestic market for that commodities. Of course, if you see that case by case, yeah, that seems to be harmful for the economy. Yeah. But as I said before, if you look at from the broad perspective, let's say we are exporting or importing not only one commodities or consumption goods, but we are also selling or buying a bunch of goods. Let's say in FTA 90% under Buku HS is liberalized. So when we are losing in one particular commodities, for example, we are importing more on consumption goods with lower tariff, but at the same time, we are exporting more to the other countries for particular commodities. Well, sadly, unfortunately, yeah, it is. Indonesia mainly now exporting basic goods such as palm oil, of course. That's the main export commodities from Indonesia. But at least, you know what? By having more access for palm oils right now, I think from the broader perspective, it can fill the gap. of the the high rate of consumption goods that Indonesia import from other countries. Well, it is quite complicated if you look at this figure, and yeah, unfortunately, Indonesia is still still having a long way to go to develop the commodities to transform the commodities from the basic goods to more sophisticated manufacturer commodities. It is going to take time, but again, from the broader perspective, I think we couldn't see trade only case by case, for example, from consumption commodities, but we also have to see from other commodities. That's it, Pak Sandri.
Okay, thanks for the explanation, Mr.
Thanks,
Firman.
Pak Sandri.
I'm looking forward to see you again.
Yo.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Mr. Freeman. Thanks, Mr. Sandy. It's a very nice talk that we can learn a lot of things. And still around 10 minutes again, so we will make it fast. And there is one question on the chat that make me interest so much from Tia Aprilia. Maybe this question will gonna be the question that will be representative of millennials question right now. Okay, Tia, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear my voice?
Okay, I can hear your voice. Okay, you can ask the question to Mr. Freeman directly.
Okay, thank you, Zemi, and thank you for the committee for coordinating this event. Hello, Mr. Firman.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Nice
So,
to see you.
sir, I'd like to ask, do you think it is possible for Indonesia if maybe someday we found, maybe by research or by any condition, that we found that the FTAs, maybe any certain FTA has brought more negative impacts than positive impacts for the whole economy of Indonesia? Is it possible for Indonesia to withdraw from a certain FTA if that case happen? And if not, what is Indonesia supposed to do then in that case? Thank you.
Okay, such a wonderful question, Tia. Okay, Mr. Freeman, please to answer it. Okay, the time is yours.
Well, thank you very much. This is very good question, and well, yeah, the first answer is it is possible. It is possible, but before we go further to that point, we have to analyze what kind of damage, what kind of negative impact that we have in doing trade agreement. Well, there was a case between Indonesia and Pakistan, for example. Pakistan is complaining for their deficit trade balance between Indonesia and Pakistan, and the thing that they can do, there is another review between Pakistan and Indonesia, right? Well, the deficit is very big. I think that was more than $1 billion US. So that was very significant. And for Pakistan, it seems to be very dangerous for their economy. So what can we do is to have another discussion. We do consultation, and we're going to trace one by one what is it the problem. For example, if of course, we're gonna open more market access to the Pakistan, all right, to other commodities, or we can renegotiate, the in some particular agreement. There is a staging of a reduction of tariff of import tariff that could be discussed later. In the case of Indonesia and Pakistan, so we are giving more access to Pakistan commodities in Indonesia. Let's say, for example, initially Pakistan has 200 tariff lines for liberalization in Indonesia market. So we give more, like we can add 100 tariff lines. for Pakistan, so they can catch up with their trade balance with Indonesia. Well, if things doesn't change, all right, so there will be another discussion before finally we decide to withdraw the negotiation. It is possible to withdraw the negotiation, but again, there will be a many stages before we go to that point, right? Negotiation analysis before we affirm that this is the best way to terminate the negotiations. I think that's the answer, Mbak Tia. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Tia, is everything clear for you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Zemi, that will be the end of our session for today's 13th Inspirational Talk with Mr. Firman. Please give a round of applause for Mr. Firman and the committee to help this event. But before we close this event, we would like to have a virtual group photo shoot with our speaker. If you don't mind, please activate your camera so we can see your beautiful smile. Everyone, please. I'm going to take it in 3 times. Okay, Mr. Didit, are you there? I'll give the instruction and Mr. Didit will take the photo shoot. Mr. Didit?
Yes. On your mark,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. If everyone is ready, we'll take the first one. We'll take the picture in 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you very much. We are going to the next pages. Okay, great. Now the second page. Hang on. In 3, 2, 1. And the last one, please. I hope you, everyone, guys, give your best smile to take this photo shoot. Okay, I'm going to count on 3, 2, 1. Okay, well done, everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Fitra. We would like to apologize if there are many mistakes from us as MC during the session. Just for your information, if you would like to join our session, don't worry because you can rewatch the recording or our Today Inspirational Talks in Indonesian CEC YouTube channel. Well, I'm Zemi and my friend Fitra. Have a great day. And until the next time, we'll see you again in another Inspirational Talk by Indonesian CEC. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Zemi. Thank you, Mas Fitra.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you,
Didit.
everyone.
Thank you, Pak Firman.
Thank you, Pak
Thank you,
Firman.
Mr. Firman.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Sita. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Pak Cahyo, for coming. Thank you, Didit.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you, everyone. Let me leave the room.
Yes, Mas. Thank you, Mas. Thank you so much, Mas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Fitra.
Yes.